try something different for a change. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar is a 5-time award-winning daily left-wing political talk show. We go live every weekday at 11 a.m. Central Time on our YouTube channel. You can find it by searching for The Majority Report. We talk about the news, we take libertarian callers, we have debates, we interview guests on topics ranging from the post-Civil War Reconstruction era, child poverty, capitalism, the intellectual dark web, and more. And that's all just within the last month. If you want to hear what smart, progressive political talk that is occasionally amusing sounds like, then you need to tune in. And you're always welcome to call in if you want to hear the correct opinion on any given topic. I will give it to you. Tune into the Majority Report at 11 a.m. Central Time on YouTube or later wherever you get your podcasts.
WVNN. Depend on it. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community.
One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger.
Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. It is Saturday, July 17th, 2021, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, July 18th, 2021, on the great WGOL in Russellville, Alabama, and sometime next week on WHIV in New Orleans, Louisiana. Today, we don't have a guest, so we'll be taking calls. Get that number ready. It's 1-866-494-9866. The 2,900 worker Volvo strike in Virginia is over. We'll be giving you a short debrief. We'll be bringing you some of the latest in Southern labor, and Huntsville will be talking about the recent hope for passage of the PRO Act and more on today's Valley Labor Report. If you want to see what we are up to throughout the week and get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. And if you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments and release them throughout the week. We do upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, you can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We've got a website where you can buy our hats and our stickers. Our hats are almost gone, folks. We've only got 15 left. 15 hats left. If you want to get one of those, make sure you go to our website and get you one. That is thevalleylaborreport.org. They are $35. Shipping is included for a good American union-made hat. And finally, if you appreciate our work and you want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Before we get into the Volvo debrief, I did want to say that the North Alabama DSA is not doing their necessities drive this week. They have moved to only doing that once per month. So we will let you know what Saturday that is. Next month, it is going to be August the 14th. I believe, is what I remember hearing from the folks that we know in North Alabama DSA. So wanted to make sure you know that, because we usually shout that out, and we'll remind you on August 14th when they're doing another necessities drive. So, good morning, Adam.
Good morning.
Volvo Trucks has a manufacturing plant in Dublin, Virginia. They manufacture actually all of the Volvo trucks that are sold in North America, which is very cool. That is based, as the kids say. And UAW Local 2069 represents 2,900 workers at this facility. There are about 3,300 workers total there, and UAW Local 2069 represents 2,900 of them. As regular listeners of the show will know, all of the nearly 3,000 UAW members have been on and off strike, mostly on, but some off strike since April the 17th, not long after the UMWA strike here in Alabama began. So it finished last week with an extremely close ratification vote under some, let's say for the moment, we'll get into it more later, but less than good conditions, we'll say. So let's back up just a bit and explain why were they on strike. The first reason was that healthcare costs were risen considerably from the previous contract to $2,000 a year with a $4,000 deductible, which is much higher than they were paying before, and that's no good. That's no good, folks. There were some other reasons, though, that they were on strike, which included the work, And this, for folks in unions, you know what this language means, the two tiers. Under the current contract, under the previous contract is what that means, workers are divided into two tiers. And this information, the next bit of information comes from Labor Notes, a Labor Notes article. They've had some good articles on this strike. So if you're not subscribed to Labor Notes, to their print edition, and you've got the money, you should do that. It's a very good publication they come out with. And it's funny because we were planning on talking to Rhonda Sisk this morning. She's a member of UAW 2069. We were planning on talking to her this morning, but she has had bronchitis, and it flared up quite a bit this morning, so she was unable to jump on the call with us, which is very unfortunate. Wishing her speedy recovery with that. It does not sound fun. Glad it's not COVID, but hopefully she has a speedy recovery there. So I had to do a little bit of digging, because I was hoping to get most of it from her. So I did some digging, and it's really amazing how few details that you get in almost any article about a strike, because I wanted to be able to present you with, and I will shortly, I wanted to be able to present you with, okay, why were these workers on strike? Because I think that's important, especially for folks who don't have that's not their kind of mentality. You're not in a union workplace. So, people going on strike in and of itself is a strange thing to a lot of people. And so you want to know why they're on strike. And almost every single article on this strike does not explain at all what these workers' grievances are. It just says, oh, they went on strike, and that's it. And it's amazing. And Labor Notes was basically the only place that really went into detail about it. So, read Labor Notes is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, under the current contract, the one that expired as they went into negotiations that they went into strike over, workers are divided into two tiers. The first tier being core employees, those with more than 15 years of seniority and competitive. New hires start at $16.77 and get $1 more each year for 5 years, up to $21.77, which is far less than the core top pay of $30 an hour. Under the rejected agreement, under the first rejected agreement, which was actually rejected by a percent of 90% to 10% for it, 90% against it, 10% for it. Under the rejected agreement, there are raises, but tiers are there to stay. The division of the workers into multiple groups were there to stay in the in that agreement. So that is very not good. But there are some raises, and the new hires in one assembler classification, for example, would get up to $27 by 2026 instead of $21.77, which does seem like that accounts for inflation and a little bit more, but still the people who are in the better tier are going to be getting significantly more, which is, you don't want that, because that creates a division in the workplace. And for what reason? For the boss. Additionally, language in the rejected agreement would have allowed union officials to agree to an unspecified alternate work schedule, such as 4 10-hour days, alternate shift operations, or other alternate schedules based on the needs of the business. Time and a half pay over 8 hours in a day would be gone. And these alternative work schedules are popular with management at the big three automakers. And as one can imagine, especially the lack of control that you have over these alternative work schedules is very unpopular with auto workers. It's one thing to say, I want to choose a 4-10 schedule or a 3-12 schedule or swing shifts for maybe additional, time and a half pay or something like that. That's one thing, to give workers an option to do that. But it's a totally different thing for management to have the authority under a contract to say to workers, this is what you're going to do, and, you can kiss my bum, basically. Yet another clause that was unpopular among the rank and filers, and this information from Labor Notes is also, which this goes into why the strike failed. This was gathered just from rank and filers because the bargaining committee was extremely not transparent in the bargaining process. They were very tight-lipped about their bargaining goals. So this was just gathered from talking to rank and filers on the picket line about why they voted the contract down initially. There was no, the official communication from the union was very, very tight-lipped, which is, it's difficult to rally support, as one can imagine, around a fight in a community and across the country when a union is not being transparent, even with their own members, much less with the broader public. So another clause would have made workers take 40 hours of vacation in order to use FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, which is, why should you have to use 40 hours of vacation in order to use your use your FMLA leave? That doesn't make sense. Also, a worker in the second tier, quote-unquote, competitive classification who asked that his name not be given to Labor Notes for protection of his anonymity, said that he wants a contract like UAW's at Mack Trucks, which is also owned by Volvo in Pennsylvania, which they said is 40 times better. The contract there was won after a strike in fall of 2019, and he wants to see all workers, instead of having 2 tiers, he wants to see all workers reach top pay after 3 years of work. And this is compared to in the 1970s, before the era of concessions by workers began, new hires reached top pay after 90 days, right? So this kind of puts into context what workers are fighting for. They're fighting for much less than they used to have, while management is making off like bandits. And so those were the things that they were on strike for, and why they rejected the initial agreement by such a large margin. So what happened? On April 17th, they went on strike. Then they rejected the agreement, and they rejected other agreements 2 more times. So in total, they rejected contract agreements 3 times. The membership did. First by a 90-10 margin, again by a 90-10 margin, and then by a 60-40 margin. And finally, on a 4th vote, on the language that was exactly the same as the 3rd vote, workers accepted by 17 votes. It was almost a 50-50 split, just a razor-thin margin of acceptance. And so what did the final contract look like, and what changed in the workers? What made them accept it that they weren't happy with before? Well, the final contract actually, unfortunately, looked a lot like the first one that they rejected. I think there were some nominal increases to wages, maybe some nominal decreases to healthcare costs, but the big issues were still there, which is very unfortunate for their workers and their families and their communities. And one of the biggest issue which auto workers across the country are facing is tiers. Tiers is still there, which is just incredibly unfortunate. And tiers are bad because it divides the workforce. When you've got these two sets of people doing the exact same job, getting paid different things, you're obviously it's gonna be bad for cohesion among the workers, right? If you're looking across the line and somebody's making doing the exact same thing you are, but they're making $10 an hour more, you're gonna be pissed at that person instead of at the boss, which is who you need to be pissed at. And that's by design, and so that's why tiers are bad. So what changed for the workers that made them accept this contract that they overwhelmingly voted against only a couple months ago? Well, we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break and talk about some nuances in the labor movement. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the machinist unions over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at IAMAW44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
WVNN.
Lonely dead, stuck, bleeding pig. Lonely ditch, I choose to dead.
All power to the workers. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. I'm here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller, and we are talking about the Volvo strike. If you want to get in, the phone number is 1-866-494-9866. Again, that phone number is 1-866-494-9866. So, on the other side of the break, and if you missed it, you can go and find us on YouTube, the Valley Labor Report, and you can go back and watch the full show there. But on the other side of the break, we talked about some of the things that the workers themselves went on strike for, and how, unfortunately, when they accepted it on the fourth vote, the big issues were not that different. There wasn't a whole lot of movement by the company. And so then the question arises, well, what changed to make workers, the same workers, who rejected this agreement by 90% to 10%. What made them accept it? Well, you've got three things as I see it. You've got employer intimidation. You've got a lack of support from the union itself, from the international, from the local, and a lack of transparency. So let's talk about the union side. Then we're going to talk about the employer side, and then we've got some stuff about where does that leave workers who don't have unions? Where does that leave the workers at Volvo Trucks specifically moving forward, right? Because we're going to lay out some issues with the union, with their strategy here. And so what does that mean for people? Does that mean that all unions are bad? Does that even mean that this union is fundamentally bad and that workers should turn in their cards? Well, I'll give you a spoiler. The answer is no, but let's talk about that for just a second. On the union side, like I mentioned before, the bargaining was incredibly opaque, even for the UAW. And it's so opaque that they did not even release copies of the contract online, which is their standard operating procedure for negotiations with the big three automakers, with Ford and Chevrolet and GM. That's their standard operating procedure. When they do negotiations with the big three, they release tentative agreements online that all of the members can look at. Well, this time they didn't even do that. They for some of the votes, they had these huge paper copies, unwieldy paper copies of the agreements that you could come and pick up from the local hall if you wanted. And other times, they didn't even let workers look at the whole of the language before they voted on it. And I think that was the case with this last time as well. They only handed out highlight pamphlets, like, okay, what are the highlights of this, without actually seeing the detail, like the real details of the agreement. It's kind of reminiscent of how Congress sometimes votes on things. I think a lot of folks will remember Nancy Pelosi's we've got to vote for it so we can see what's in it, which is just, normal people, right? That's absurd. It's silly. That's a silly way to run our society. It's a silly way to run bargaining for a union, for a workplace. It's silly. It's not good. So it was incredibly opaque, and there was not a lot of support from the local and the international. Every time they came to the workers with an agreement, they were not straight with them. They were like, this is a good agreement. You should vote for it. You should do this and you should do that, and just go back to work. And David, I think last week he said, and sometimes with elected union officials, with people who they are staff on the union, there's some amount of perverse incentives there, right? Like, yeah, and that's just the way it is, and you've got to deal with that, and you've got to set up structures with that. But there is some amount of perverse incentives where union officials want their workers to go back to work because they want to keep the union flowing, as opposed to making sure that the agreement is the best that the workers can get, which is very unfortunate.
And that's something that's been a hallmark of labor really since...
Is your mic on?
It should be.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Let me see the OBS.
Okay.
Yeah. So, on the employer side, it doesn't look like your mic's on from looking at the Audacity. Maybe check that out. But on the employer side, what happened? Well, they took advantage of the weak leadership, and they threatened workers with implementation of the contract over their no vote, which would not be good, and a removal of their bonus. So they basically said that, okay, look, if you vote to ratify it on this fourth try, on the fourth vote, then you'll get a $2,000 sign-on bonus, and if you don't, then no matter when it is that we finally wrap it up, you won't get a sign-on bonus, which is really coercive. And so and of course, there's definitely threats from the company in all sorts of ways, and coercion from the company, and you know, the contract that they offered itself was coercive, because it's like, you know, you're not giving them what they're worth. And so what does it mean then for, like I said, for workers and for people that aren't in unions? What does that mean? It means that sometimes you do actually have to fight the boss, and you have to fight the union to a certain extent. And in fact, the guest that we were going to talk to, she filed a ULP against her local president, an unfair labor practice against her local union president for their lack of transparency in bargaining, which in case there's any confusion about where we would stand on that, that's cool as hell, and very, you know, I mean, very cool. If you're elected officers, the officers don't work, they're not supposed to work for the company. They work for you. And so if they're not doing their jobs, screw them, right? File ULPs against them. You know, fight them. And that's great. And so the, you know, it just goes into the larger kind of UAW strategy and some business union strategies of cooperation over agitation and organization. And I remember reading an interview, I can't remember where it was, I think maybe it was by Chris Brooks did it, where he talked to somebody who had been in the union for a very long time, and they remember getting jackets or something with the UAW logo right next to the GM logo, and they were like, what the hell is this? You know, we're not on the same team. We're not on the same team. And it's not like he was interviewing like a socialist or a communist or anything. This was just a union person who recognized the fact that they're not on the same team, right? Your boss is not on your team insofar as, you know, your material conditions go, especially if you're in the private sector. You know, I mean, it's not, and so that jacket with a UAW logo and with a GM logo is really kind of indicative of a broader strategy of cooperation over organization, and that's not going to be good for workers. And so sometimes you are going to have to fight the union. But here's the thing, it's better than fighting the boss alone. Rhonda, the person that we were going to be talking to today, she told me in the brief conversation we had yesterday that she has been energized by the strike more than she ever has before, and she is looking forward to keeping in touch, and I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with her, seeing what she does for her sisters and brothers at Volvo. We're going to wrap up our conversation on the Volvo strike on the other side of this break, and we'll be taking your calls, so make sure you stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Brian Clark. White House officials have criticized social media companies, saying they're not taking enough steps to stop the spread of vaccine misinformation on their platforms. Asked if that constitutes censorship, Press Secretary Jen Psaki said,
"We don't block anything. Facebook and any private sector company makes decisions about what information should be on their platform. Our point is that there is information that is leading to people not taking the vaccine, and people are dying as a result."
Facebook says it is saving lives by providing information about vaccines. As coronavirus case numbers climb in all 50 states, health experts say this is becoming a pandemic of unvaccinated people. Dr. Paul Offit is a vaccine expert at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
You still have a solid 60, 70, 80 million Americans who simply refuse to get vaccinated. And what do you do then? What do you do then when you have a significant percentage of the population that's allowing the virus to continue to spread, continue to mutate, continue to cause harm, suffering, hospitalization, death, and worst of all, continuing to possibly create variants which are going to be relatively resistant to the immunity induced by vaccination?
President Biden today in a statement calls a decision from a federal judge declaring the DACA program illegal deeply disappointing. Details from ABC's Mary Alice Parks.
A federal judge in Texas ruled that the Obama administration did not have the authority or take the proper steps when it set up the program back in 2012. Now, this program has allowed more than 650,000 immigrants who were brought here illegally as children, mostly by their parents, to gain status, to work and live and go to school here over these last 9 years.
President's calling on Congress to act for a permanent solution. Wildfires continue to scorch the western U.S., the largest, the Bootleg fire in southern Oregon, growing by as much as 4 miles a day. Investigators in New York will interview Governor Andrew Cuomo today as part of the Attorney General's investigation into sexual harassment allegations. You're listening to ABC News.
Do you check your Google search results regularly? You should. People often get their first impression of you or your business online. Negative comments on the internet can impact your life and your livelihood. Take control of your online reputation. Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com. It may reveal negative posts from an ex-employee, upset patient or client, news article, legal issue, or even exposed personal information right there in your Google search results. Uncover what's lurking on the internet about you with reputationdefender.com's patented scan and get your free reputation report card. Or for immediate assistance with your reputation, call 800-401-6681. Our cutting-edge technology helps make your Google search results look their best. Call 800-401-6681. That's 800-401-6681. 800-401-6681. Or take the free scan at Reputation Defender.
My name is Dr. Zach Hayden, and I am the Executive Director of the Automotive Free Clinic. I hold a PhD from Berkeley and 2 Automotive Service Excellence certifications. The Automotive Free Clinic is a 501c3 nonprofit shop in Prattville, Alabama, and I have 7 years of experience in the automotive field. We began as a pandemic project in March of 2020 with a dream of providing free and low-cost automotive repair to disadvantaged people. Our shop works by providing parts to community members at commercial cost, and labor is on a pay-what-you-can basis. Our shop was a mobile repair shop for approximately 1 year. During that time, we repaired almost 70 vehicles and gave away 2 vehicles to needy community members. We need your help to continue providing this service. Our staff of about 12 are all volunteers, including 2 technicians, but we do have overhead, including shop rent, insurance, service manuals, tools, and utilities. To make a donation, please visit automotivefreeclinic.org. Thank you.
You can listen to Yaffe every weekday morning, 9 to 11 a.m. on WVNN.
This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. We've been trying to break down the Volvo strike for you as best we can. So we talked about how, sometimes you are going to have to fight elected officials in your union who have gotten too comfy with the boss, but it's better than fighting the boss without a union. There are going to be some people who criticize unions and they say, instead of you need to throw away your union card and you need to form a rank and file committee. And so the question I would have for people like that is, how is it easier to organize rank and file people without a union contract in place to protect workers for organization, even if the protection that the union offers is minimal? In what scenario are you better off without a union? Because what you're doing ostensibly for the workers, which the boss would say it's for the workers too. The boss isn't going to come out and say, they're not going to come out and say, I hate the workers, I want them to die, I want them to be poor, and that's why I'm not giving them the raises that they are asking for and why I'm taking this huge bonus. They're not going to say that. They're going to say something about blah, 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 markets, my labor's worth more, blah, 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 innovation. Nonsense, right? We all recognize that as nonsense, but they want people to throw away their union cards. They want people to decertify their union. They want people to vote no in a union election. And so when it's not just because, like, they wouldn't spend so much money fighting the union. Like, they're not, as kind of wicked and evil and self-interested as corporations can be. They're not stupid, right? If unions helped the bosses, they wouldn't fight them. They wouldn't fight them. And so the fact that bosses are so anti-union should give you some pause as somebody who is ostensibly a worker advocate who advocates against union organization. And Rhonda Sisk, remember, she filed an unfair labor practice against her union president. That's huge, right? That doesn't happen often. And she told me yesterday that there are some people at the Volvo plant that are so pissed off, and rightfully so, at their union that they told her that they're gonna throw away their union card, and they're gonna save the $70 a month or whatever that their dues are. And she said that every time someone says that, she says, no, don't do that. That's one, right? That's what the boss wants, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's not going to help you, and I can hear you now, Adam. That's not going to help you doing what the boss wants. And so what is she doing then? As somebody who's obviously obviously pissed off at her local president, pissed off enough to file an unfair labor practice, which again is not common. That does not happen very often, that you see somebody filing an unfair labor practice against their own union, right? She is, one, retaining her membership, and she says that she's going to be getting more active in her union, and she's going to be more of a thorn in the side of her leadership. And she said that she's only been there for 3 years, and she doesn't even really necessarily need the work because her husband works, and she wasn't actually planning on staying there full time. But after this strike, it has so energized her, and she was like, she told me that I'm not the type of person you want to make angry. And she said that Volvo and the UAW have made her angry. So she's going to stay, and she's going to fight, and she's going to organize within the union. She's going to fight for more democratic and open and transparent bargaining processes, which we have talked about on the show. We've talked about with people who have done this successfully. You can go back and watch our interview with the NYU Grad Workers Union. They talked about how open bargaining was so important. You can talk to folks at the News Guild. You can read stuff online about how important open bargaining is, and that just means that open bargaining, what does that look like? That means every member who's going to be affected by the contract can actually see negotiations as they happen. Everybody gets input. You take surveys of what the membership wants. The bargaining committee is elected out of the rank and file. The bargaining committee is transparent with what they're asking for from the boss, and the demands are made by the membership on the bargaining committee, and all of these things. And that's going to help strengthen the union and make it better, make it more democratic, and that's going to be better for the workers. And that's
but that can be scary for folks who are used to doing it a certain way.
Right.
I mean, you and I both know some folks who are good union people who would be hesitant to engage in that kind of strategy. And it's because, for one thing, it's just the institutional atrophy that happens over time. You get used to doing things a certain way. And some of it is fear.
Mm-hmm.
I know, in my experience on a bargaining team, one of the biggest concerns was how transparent can we be when we know there are people in the union who will run back to management.
Right.
Unfortunately, you get a group more than one, and the chances go up that you have a snitch in your midst. So those are, it's real concerns that folks have. It's not always, just like leaders kind of stuck in their ways, but there are legitimate issues to work through. And I think that's what your point is, that the more democratic your union and the more rank and file members are engaged in how it operates, that's where your strength comes from. It's from that democratic input. And, I think Rhonda's right on. this is not the time to abandon your membership. This is the time to strengthen your membership and to run for office yourself, to form a caucus within the union. It's the time to, to rally those folks who are upset about the contract and see what you can do to improve it next time. Don't give in to that boss's wish.
Right.
To abandon, because they're hoping, number one, they get a contract that favors the company.
Yeah.
But number two, that if it does favor the company, enough workers will see that and be pissed and, abandon the union, which just means the next contract will be even more in the company's favor.
Right.
So don't give in to that temptation. I know that it's a real thing. It's certainly hard to avoid those emotions in the midst of a heated loss. It happens. But the thing about unions is there is democratic accountability to working people. So you see these debates a lot of times about, should you operate inside or outside, a political party like the Democrats, for example. But that's a different,
totally
there's some similarities. It's a different, it's a different game than operating inside of a union.
Right. Yeah. And that's, It is really important that you mentioned there are some there even potentially, let's say, if even this UAW, like, I don't know what's in their hearts. Maybe that's what they think is best for the workers. Like, I don't know, but it's pretty obvious looking from the outside and actually talking to rank and file workers that they don't think that this is what's in their best interest. And so as unions, we need to strengthen our democratic processes and make sure that the members are the ones that ultimately control the thing. And so what Rhonda's going to be doing is she's going to be doing exactly that, getting more active in her union. And one of the things that's happening in the UAW internationally is they're having a one-member, one-vote referendum in the fall, I think it is, which will create direct elections for the international leadership, which is something that the international leadership has been somewhat insulated from member opinion for a very long time, because they've been elected by delegates or by officers or something like that, and instead of a direct election by the membership, which does insulate them to a certain degree. And so she's going to be fighting for the increased democracy in her international union. She's going to be fighting for one member, one vote. And then after that, she's like, I've got 6 years before this contract is over, and you better believe that we're going to be ready next time. And that's just so exciting. And that's the opposite of what the boss wants, and that's the opposite of what some people that are ostensibly for the workers are going to tell you to do as a result of this, which would be to turn in your union card, which is not, it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you to turn in your union card. It's not going to help you not to have a union on the job. It simply isn't. And we can go through all the stats that show that union members have it better, right? And not for nothing. They make higher wages. They have better health care. They have better retirement. They work less hours. They, anything that you can think of about work, union members have it better. And so, like, as somebody who is ostensibly in favor of supporting the workers, like, you've got to reckon with that. And a lot of people, they just simply don't. And so wherever you do have to fight against the union and the boss, do it. Fight against the union and the boss. Fight against the union officials, the union bureaucrats, so to speak,
right?
Where you have to. And another reason that people lean to the lack of democracy and lack of transparency is because sometimes it can just simply be easier. Growing up,
right.
Everybody knows that the right thing to do is not always the easy thing to do, and it's hard to be a good democratic and transparent union.
It's very messy. It can be slower.
Right. There are certain drawbacks to it, but we believe that that's the right way to go, and we believe that is what is going to increase worker power. So,
yeah, and I think Even a lackluster union is better than no union.
Absolutely.
Even a lackluster contract is better than no contract.
Yeah.
And the union is the workers united, not the institutions, and that's where our strength comes from.
Yep. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334, or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
Where Alabama talks, WVNN. Depend on it.
As a glimpse from the backseat, Southtown kids waiting for the bus and blurs of white and navy blue. Out past City Wall, each little kingdom fills stucco citadel with tow-headed children. So we file quietly, hush down into the long dark.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. We got a caller. Joe Marshall he was a member of the steelworkers for a very long time, and he made some good points. And which is that, and like I said, this, so to be fair, we are kind of looking at this situation from an outside perspective. I have talked to some of at least one rank and file worker down there, and she does seem to be pretty active. That's Rhonda. But he said that that they were very transparent, that he was, when he was on bargaining committees with his union, and there were times when they asked for rank and file input that the rank and file just simply didn't engage. They didn't come to meetings. They didn't, they just didn't engage. And so it's very hard to, and so that's another reason that having a really, really robust kind of democratic participation is difficult, because sometimes people and again, not without reason, they just want to go to work and they just want to go home, and it is easier to let somebody else do everything for you. And I think those of us that are really active in the labor movement have our fair share of complaints about people who are in the rank and file and who don't participate and who don't contribute, and then come negotiations or come vote on, or come election time or something like that, they'll complain and they'll say, oh, why isn't this in there? Why isn't that in there? You didn't do this or you didn't do that. And complaining about the union officials who are the only people who are, and again, I don't know exactly, maybe there's robust rank and file participation, and the union official here at UAW 2069 is totally pushing back against that, or maybe there's something in the middle, or maybe these people got activated by the strike and we'll see them more active going forward. But obviously there's like, not like there is a tendency, and I don't want to fall into that, of saying that every time somebody does something that seems, as a union official, that seems to maybe be against the workers' interest or something like that, that they've got a bad heart, that they're trying to do the workers wrong, that they're really just like in the pocket of the boss, so to speak, because a lot of times, they're the only folks in their union that are willing to do the work, and that's a really difficult spot to be in if you can't pull in member participation and then to try to do everything to the best of your ability, only to be criticized as a stooge and as a all this after putting in a lot of long hours. I know people that have been criticized as union bureaucrats and really terrible people that I actually have a lot of criticisms of myself, but I also know that they have been during a strike that they were negotiating for. They spent night after night after night after night at the union hall on an air mattress in their office. And the first thing that they did in the morning when they woke up, and the last thing that they did in the evening when they went down, was work for the union, work for the membership. And there are a lot of criticisms that I have of the people that I've got in mind, but would I say that those people specifically that I have personal knowledge of are in the pocket of the company, that they're trying to screw over the workers? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So Joe Marshall called in, and he had a couple other things that he wanted to add. Those were a couple things that you said over the break that I wanted to bring out. So Joe, thank you for calling in, and thank you for listening to the show. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Jacob. Thanks for the show. And I appreciate seeing what I'm gonna categorize as young fellers take up the reins of the labor movement. We certainly need more of that. I'd be considered an old guy now, and probably an old schooler, and I'm sure some things have changed since I retired, but it couldn't have changed that much in that short period of time. But Jacob, you stated what I had told you about as well as I could have done it, if not better. But let me just touch on a couple of things. Transparency, for instance. We tried to be as absolute transparent as we could be during negotiations. Short of putting out newsletters and so forth for the company to read, we didn't do anything like that. We certainly had union meetings monthly, and if it was an ongoing negotiation, we certainly updated the membership where we was at. But there were certain things that went across the table during negotiations that not often, but sometimes got tabled and slid aside for later on in the negotiation. So we didn't want to go back and tell our members, we've achieved this or that, and then the next day, that goes off the table or things change because it's negotiations, a little give and take. But let me. When we did have a last, final, and best offer from the company, we would take that to a special called union meeting, and of course it was to vote on. But this might sound a little strange, but we made our membership, in order to vote, actually come and listen at the proposal and the contract changes. Mm-hmm. Now, we had members who picked up on little bits and pieces during negotiations out on the shop floor and had made up their mind either way before even hearing the proposal, who basically got fighting mad because they had to attend a meeting approximately an hour to hear what the proposal was, and that really bothered me. But there was a lot of that. So them same members, they want you to be transparent. Yeah. But then again, they don't really want to know. They just want to get it over with one way or the other. And I'll get off that subject. But let me say On the two-tier thing that y'all been discussing, probably the worst thing that I can remember coming down the pipe was two-tier wages, and we had members who basically would say, well, why should I care about the guy that ain't even been hired here yet? Well, here's the real problem in that. If you got an aging workforce, at some point in time, those members on the two-tier, the bottom tier, are going to outnumber the ones on the top. And when a contract proposal comes down and they offer these guys $2 an hour, for instance, to cut the guys on the top $5 an hour, what do you think they're going to do? So people should be concerned about the two-tier. Eventually, it'll catch up with you and be your worst nightmare.
Right.
One more thing, the so-called bonuses, the so-called ratification bonuses that these companies throw out there. If there's a ratification bonus in that contract proposal, then you got to know that the true meaning of that is a concession bonus.
Yep.
You take the concessions and we're going to drop this amount of money on you. And most of the time they've done the math to where 3, 5, 6 year contract, whatever it's going to be, don't look like you're losing much. But the minute you make them concessions and take their little $3,500 or whatever ratification bonus, it's gone forever.
Right.
It don't take long for that to catch up with you. You're going to really struggle getting back what you had if that's ever possible. Now, one other thing, and I get off here. This
is great.
And going back for about what you went out for on the first offer. I walked a strike for approximately 8 weeks, and it was over wages at the time. Company was offering basically the industry standard percentage raises year to year, and we literally wasn't going to accept that. We basically wanted 2% more than what they has offered year to year, and we struck. Now, after 8 weeks, people are getting hungry. They're getting antsy. Things ain't going real well. International and the officers trying to do the best they can to hold the thing together. Fortunately, when I walked that 8-week strike, we had nobody cross the picket line. But when they finally made another proposal, we accepted that basically for what we went out for. Don't sound good on the surface, and it wouldn't. We lost a strike in so many words.
Right.
But this was a 3-year contract. When we went to the bargaining table the next time, the very first thing out of the company's lawyer's mouth, the very first thing was, look, y'all showed y'all manhood last contract, and we showed ours. All we want to do is get a contract. And literally, they slid one concession across the table. We slid it back to them and told them we wasn't interested in it. And it went back in their briefcase, never to come up again. So long story short on that, sometimes where you think you wasn't successful in that strike, in the future, it may very well help you. We actually set a record that next time as far as negotiating and having something delivered to the membership without a concession on it, and it flew about as quick as I ever seen one go, and folks were satisfied.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you still looking at the next contract,
right?
And that next 3-year contract, they're getting their ducks in a row, the company, to probably
Joe, we're coming
hit you with some pretty hard concessions the next time.
Right,
But listen, Jacob, I'm going to get off here, man. Like I say, I appreciate what y'all do. Keep us informed. These are the kind of shows I really like.
Thanks, Joe.
Where we talk about it.
This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
Coronavirus cases are up in every state with the Delta variant surging in areas where vaccination rates are low. The CDC says 32% of Americans have not gotten their first COVID shot. The worst hit states include Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, Missouri, and Nevada. Dr. Offit of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and a member of the FDA's advisory panel of vaccines says more mask mandates are likely.
We're going to have to start to see more and more local mandates to compel people to do the right thing.
Los Angeles County bringing back the mask mandate starting today, even for people fully vaccinated. They must wear masks in public. President Biden in a statement says he's deeply disappointed after a federal judge ruled the DACA program is not legal. The program provides protections for the so-called dreamers, those undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. At least 150 people are dead in Central Europe. Rescues still taking place after catastrophic flooding in Western Germany and Belgium. Michelle Franz and ABC News.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air.
You have questions. We have answers. News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. Depend on it. WVNN.
Try to act it up. You call the principal J-Rig, act it up. You call the fires, try to act it up. You call the principal J-Rig, act it up. You call the fire. You call yourself a girl.
All power to the workers. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. Let's go right into what happened. Well, did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out Mr. Marshall. I always love it when our elders, and I mean that with all respect, when our elders call in and share some knowledge they gained over the years. He had a lot of really great stuff in there. The two-tier is such a massive problem in our contracts. And even those of you who don't have contracts, it's also coming up in retirement packages.
Yeah.
If you are an educator in the state of Alabama, you are subject to a two-tier retirement pension. So on the one hand, you're kind of lucky. It's a unique situation to still have a defined benefit pension, but that was a major setback for educators and other state employees. And I really, something that resonated with me was also that, quite frankly, sometimes the loudest complainers among your membership are the ones who never come to meetings. Yeah. They never read the newsletter. They never do anything. But those are the first to get up and gripe about, a contract or a vote.
Oh, yeah, I know that David, if he were here, he'd have some stories.
Yeah.
And even in my short participation, I'm now the chair of the elections committee for my local right now, and we're going through elections. And I've had a few people complain at me, and I'm like, look, man, I'm doing my best, and I'm not getting paid for it, okay? So, chill with your
the thing is
complaining about me.
That's the nature of any volunteer organization.
Any work that you do to try to make society better, there are only so many people that are interested in doing it, and if you put yourself on the front, then you're going to get the brunt of it. So.
Yeah, and that's why it is though so important to keep always expanding your numbers and getting more people involved so that you don't risk burning out, and so that you don't risk folks who do get kind of complacent or comfortable, not through any malice, but just through human nature and just through time passing. So the more you can, continually expand and, have generational diversity, those things are very, very important. So,
and I do think that was a good. I feel like that was a good balance to the first 30 minutes that we spent talking about the Volvo strike, because and I think that there are still. I don't think that anything that I said was wrong, but it is a good, but especially for folks that aren't in unions, it's a good context, a good lens for people to have, because that Joe gave us, because we Adam and I and everybody in the audience that are in unions, we have that lens, and so like everything that we say that's critical of officers in the labor movement, of people in the labor movement, it is through that lens, but it's important to say that explicitly, I think. So
yeah, because at the end of the day, I know for you and I, like, our loyalty is with the movement and not the institutions themselves.
Right.
But that said, the institutions, we're always going to defend them from the bosses and the politicians, 100%.
And even, even like you said, a lackluster union that may have kind of atrophied over time. It is a lot better having that institution there is a lot better than not.
It still gives you a vehicle to create change.
Exactly. So what happened last week in Southern labor? This segment is brought to you by Jonah Furman. You can subscribe to his newsletter to get the rest of what happened in U.S. labor on Substack. That is whogetsthebird.substack.com. So let's jump right into new organizing. 96 staffers at DC-based 501c3 Defenders of Wildlife are unionizing with OPEIU, Local 2. 104 transportation and maintenance workers for Corpus Christi Regional Transportation in Corpus Christi, Texas, are organizing with the Transportation Workers Union. 45 security guards at the Customs and Border Patrol building in El Paso are unionizing with SPFPA. 6 bricklayers and masons for furnace parts supplier Specialty Foundry Products in Bessemer, Alabama, are organizing with the Bricklayers Local 8 Southeast. Woot woot. 4 workers in Carmeuse, which makes limestone and limestone products, are joining the steel workers in Macon, Georgia. We had a couple of NLRB wins. 38 workers at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits in San Antonio, Texas, voted 18-9 to join Teamsters Local 657. 6 staffers at the Ohio River Valley Environmental Coalition in Huntington, West Virginia, voted 3-0 to unionize with the IWW, despite management firing at least one, maybe more, of the organizers. And we have a connection there. Brendan Bates, he is a fellow worker in the IWW. Both of us are dual carders in the IWW. I've had many conversations with him. Adam has had one, at least one with him. He's a very good guy. And so we believe that he will be reinstated at some point in the future. So we're looking forward to seeing another win for the IWW in West Virginia after he gets reinstated. There were a few losses and decertifications. 28 warehouse workers for a UPS Supply Chain Solutions, which is somehow different from UPS, whose warehouse workers are all union in the largest private sector union contract in the United States. 28 warehouse workers for UPS Supply Chain Solutions in Memphis voted 11-13 against joining Teamsters Local 667. 70 security guards at EPA headquarters in Washington, D.C. are forming an independent union, which appears to have broken away from SPFPA, though somehow GUSP is also involved. UGSO is raiding a unit of 8 FAA security guards in Hapeville, Georgia, currently represented by the Protection and Response Officers of America. Strike and bargaining updates. We just finished talking about the Volvo strike, but for those that are just now tuning in, the 2,900 worker Volvo strike in Dublin, Virginia has ended somewhat ingloriously. You can listen to our talk about that on YouTube from the beginning of the show. 1,100 UMWA coal miners are still on strike, and their actions are ramping up with another march in New York City planned for July the 28th and a huge rally in Brookwood scheduled for August the 4th. 20 barbers at Fort Lee Army Base in Prince George County, Virginia, represented by the Laborers International Union, struck last week. And Jonas shouted out the ILR Labor Action Tracker, for catching that one. At issue there is the fact that haircutters who work for a contractor, Sheffield Barbers, get 55% of the fee for a haircut, but when the contractor raised the price from $11.25 to $13, barbers found that they were still only getting 55% of the lower price. As many as 690 metal workers at Arnold Air Force Base in Tullahoma, Tennessee, were on strike for 9 days with Air Engineering Metal Trades Council, with a ratification vote to come yesterday morning, so we will see what happened there next week.
I do believe that contract was ratified.
It was ratified.
And I think the strike is over.
Thank you, Adam. And Jonah mentions that it's interesting there that there's almost no information about that, despite it being a pretty big labor action in the South on a military base, which is like triply unusual, which goes to show the, I don't know.
It is, and the only thing I've been able to find is like local Tullahoma newspaper, and even that's been pretty short on details. So that's a running theme on this show, is that there is a lack of media coverage for the labor movement and labor issues.
Teamsters with Local 639 have unanimously voted to authorize a strike against Capitol Paving in Washington, D.C., and are expected to vote down the latest contract offer. Bartlesville, Oklahoma firefighters are at an impasse in their contract negotiations as well. There's some internal union politics updates. Bloomberg Law has an interesting look at the number of ULPs workers are filing against their own unions. We mentioned that Rhonda Sisk filed an unfair labor practice against her union president. They were down dramatically in 2020 and seem to be down in 2021 as well, and it is not attributable to job losses. So that would be interesting to figure out what's up with that. Politics and legislation. The Houston Firefighters Association, in their long struggle with the mayor, have gathered enough signatures to get binding arbitration to put on the ballot for a referendum this fall. This is of particular interest to the firefighters there, who have been in legal battles over a raise since 2017. And so binding arbitration, why are they fighting to get binding arbitration? Isn't binding arbitration bad? Well, not always. See, binding arbitration is bad when it is put in contracts without the input of workers and their unions. Binding arbitration can be put into union contracts where there is a neutrally decided arbitration panel instead of an arbitration panel decided completely by the company. So company arbitration, bad. Union arbitration, good. Firefighters in Houston are fighting for the good one. This month, Joe Biden announced a pay raise for federal firefighters to bring them up to $15 an hour. And the National Federation of Federal Employees, which is a machinists affiliate, is urging the administration to build on that progress for federal firefighters. And finally, the PRO Act has some hope of passing in the Infrastructure Reconciliation Bill, which is good. So that's going to segue us. I thought we would have more time, especially since we didn't have a guest, but gosh, time absolutely flies. So
before you get on the PRO Act, I think it's worth mentioning that we do have over 600 members at the Frito-Lay plant in Topeka, Kansas. Right. Even though that's outside of the South, that is one of the most visible strikes happening right now. Labor Notes has some good reporting on that. And also a friend of the show, Max Alvarez with the Working People podcast, just put out an episode this week with on-the-ground reporting from that Frito-Lay strike. My understanding is you have 80-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
You have
7/12s.
77 cent increase over 12 years for these workers. Just totally ridiculous. So,
Yeah.
if you're at the gas station, at the grocery store, and, getting some munchies, getting some Frito-Lay chips, think about that. Think about the fact that those workers who are producing those items are definitely getting screwed. They need our support right now. So, encourage you to check out Labor Notes and check out Working People. We need to stay tuned to this Frito-Lay strike.
Absolutely. So the PRO Act, some portions of it have a chance to pass through the Reconciliation Infrastructure Bill. So let's have a quick review. I was hoping we'd be able to dive more into it this week, but maybe we can do a deeper dive next week or subsequent weeks. So what is the PRO Act? The PRO Act is the largest piece of positive labor law reform since the National Labor Relations Act, really. I mean, it just does so much. It eliminates right to work across the country. It would mandate, which this is something that a lot of people, especially conservative talk radio hosts, purposely, I think, misunderstand. It would mandate that employers follow the law in union elections by saying that if you don't follow the law in a union election, and before the union election more than 50% of the workforce said that they wanted a union, then if you violate the law, then the government will certify the union regardless of the vote outcome, which is important because that is actually going to give them an incentive to make sure that there is a free and fair election.
Wait, you mean companies might actually face consequences for breaking the law?
It's weird.
I thought that was just regular people that face those consequences.
And it's really weird that conservatives would be against that, but,
Yeah, but it's funny how law and order just doesn't apply.
Yeah. Of course. It would also institute real consequences for firing pro-union workers. It would allow the NLRB to levy fines. It would, there's just so much. It would make legal secondary strikes where workers at one workplace in a manufacturing line want to go on a sympathy strike for other workplaces to try to put pressure on the larger system. And so some of that sounds like, well, how's that going to pass through reconciliation? Because reconciliation is just about the federal government's budget, and things can only pass reconciliation if they affect the federal government's budget. So, some of that doesn't sound like it can pass through reconciliation, and the Communication Workers of America have a good explainer on what they think can make it through reconciliation. We're going to give that to you on the other side, and we're going to talk about Huntsville. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and want to be a part of this union, to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880.
WVNN. Depend on it.
Put it there, boy. We'll show these fascists what a couple of hillbillies can do.
All power to the workers This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. We've been talking about the PRO Act. The PRO Act, or parts of it, have a chance at passing through the Infrastructure Reconciliation Bill. So, like I mentioned, this is a very broad piece of legislation, and we know that reconciliation, the only things that can pass through reconciliation are things that directly affect the federal budget. So what are the things that have a chance of passing through reconciliation in the PRO Act? The CWA has a handy budget reconciliation fact sheet. And they believe that there are 4 major provisions that can make it through budget reconciliation. The first is to restore and enhance tax deduction for union dues. Previously, union members were able to deduct taxes they were able to deduct their union dues from their taxes. But here's something that's interesting that you won't hear about. The 2017 Trump quote-unquote tax cut raised taxes for union members because it disallowed us from being able to deduct our dues from taxes. So the tax cut was that's another example of how it was really only for the corporations. The second, it would end tax deductibility of the costs of hiring permanent strike replacements. This would prevent businesses from deducting from their taxes expenses incurred in fighting workers' efforts to unionize, the hiring of strike replacements, and any other expenses used to fight the workers or their unions. And it's insane that you can deduct taxes for that, for which corporations spend millions of dollars and workers can't deduct the $40 to $70 a month that we spend in dues. I mean, just insane. 3, it would reduce the misclassification of employees as independent contractors. The current tax code allows companies to continue to misclassify workers as independent contractors even if the IRS determines they are employees. The solution is to establish tax penalties for companies that misclassify employees as independent contractors. Properly classified employees would have the right to form a union, collectively bargain, and receive benefits, which currently, as misclassified quote-unquote independent contractors, they do not have. 4th and finally, civil penalties for unfair labor practices. One of the main reasons why we need labor reform right now is that companies only receive a slap on the wrist for violating workers' rights and committing unfair labor practices. Budget reconciliation should establish financial penalties for unfair labor practices and hopefully apply those penalties to the new unfair labor practice statute created under the PRO Act, like the PRO Act's ban on captive audience meetings and permanent striker replacement. So there's your update on the PRO Act and its chances of passing through reconciliation. Adam, what happened last week in Huntsville?
Well, before we get to Huntsville, I think since you left off on captive audience meetings, I think it's worth mentioning that we have some brothers and sisters.
About that. Gosh, there's so much going on.
Yeah, so we have brothers and sisters over in Georgia who actually make Ray-Ban sunglasses and other